A shocking story of aviation's darkest horror-imagine. This, two planes, carrying 349 souls, hurtling toward each other in the twilight skies above Delhi. The air is thick with tension as these two aircraft, one already climbing into the sky and the other descending toward the airport, speed toward a deadly rendezvous. On board one, 5 highly trained pilots are preparing to land, while in the other, 3 pilots are setting course for their destination. Thousands of feet above them, an air traffic controller is watching 2 blips on his radar, inch closer and closer. What connects these planes, these pilots, and this controller? The answer: a fragile system that holds up the entire world of aviation safety. A system designed to prevent disaster. But what happens when the system, like a pyramid, has weak foundations? What you're about to witness is a chilling tale of what can go wrong when the infrastructure meant to keep us safe collapses. The tragic event that changed aviation forever. In the evening of November 12, 1996, disaster struck in one of the most crowded and chaotic airspaces in the world. Flight 763, a Saudi Arabian Airlines Boeing 747, was preparing to take off from Delhi, India, bound for Saudi Arabia. The flight carried 289 passengers and 23 crew members, many of whom were migrant workers heading to the Gulf for jobs in construction and hospitality. A few hundred kilometers away, another plane was on its descent toward the same airport. Kazakhstan's Flight 1907, a Soviet-designed Ilyushin 76, carried 27 passengers, mostly traders heading to Delhi to buy textiles for the return journey. As the two flights made their way towards each other, nobody could have predicted the catastrophic outcome that was about to unfold. 2 flights, one deadly path at 6:20 p.m. As Saudi Flight 763 pushed back from the gate, Flight 1907 was descending into Delhi's airspace. In command of the Saudi aircraft was Captain Khalid al-Shabali, a highly experienced pilot with over 10,000 hours in the air. Alongside him was First Officer Nazir Khan, an American with more than 7,000 flight hours. The rest of the crew consisted of flight engineer Ahmed Idris, who had a little over 3,000 flight hours, but was still a capable part of the team. Meanwhile, on the Kazakh plane, Captain Alexander Koropanov, along with his experienced crew, was descending toward Delhi. But there was a critical difference between the two flights. The Kazakh crew's lack of proficiency in English, combined with outdated equipment, would prove to be fatal. The critical airspace, a recipe for disastro's airspace, was a mess in 1996. It was split between civilian and military control, creating a bottleneck where arriving and departing flights shared the same narrow corridor. This design, already outdated and under protest from air traffic controllers, was about to cause disaster. As Flight 1907 descended into this tightly controlled corridor, Saudi Flight 763 took off, climbing into the same airspace. Despite the fact that this was a potentially deadly situation, the two flights followed their respective paths, each unaware of the other's location and altitude. A deadly miscommunication disaster began with a small but critical miscommunication. The Kazakh flight was cleared to descend to 15,000 feet, but the radio operator, lacking an altimeter of his own, was forced to guess the aircraft's altitude. When he mistakenly reported that the plane had reached 15,000 feet, the controller, unaware of the error, cleared the Saudi flight to climb to 14,000 feet. At this point, the two planes were on a collision course. The Saudi flight, climbing steadily, and the Kazakh flight, descending, both unaware of the deadly proximity. Seconds from disaster in the cockpit of the Kazakh plane, the pilots began to search for the Saudi aircraft in the thick clouds, but visibility was poor. They could hear the transmissions between the controller and the Saudi flight, but because of the cloud cover, they could not see the approaching jet. Meanwhile, on the Saudi flight, the pilots were unaware of the dangerous altitude deviation of the Kazakh plane. As the seconds ticked down, the planes continued to converge. The final moments at 6:39 p.m., just 18 seconds before impact, the radio operator on the Kazakh flight shouted for the crew to hold the level. But it was too late. The Saudi plane was now just moments away. The left wing of the Kazakh Aviation collided with the left engines of the Boeing 747, igniting an explosion that rocked both aircraft. The two planes, now in flames, spiraled toward the ground. In the control tower, the air traffic controller watched in horror as the two blips on his radar merged and disappeared. The aftermath, a wake-up call for the aviation industry. The crash, which killed all 349 people aboard the two planes, remains the deadliest mid-air collision in history and the third deadliest air disaster overall. Investigations soon revealed that outdated technology, poor communication, and a lack of basic safety features played a pivotal role in the tragedy. Key among these issues was the absence of a traffic collision avoidance system (TCAS) on the planes. While TCAS was mandatory in the United States, it wasn't yet required in India or elsewhere in the world. Had the planes been equipped with this system, they would have received immediate warnings to avoid the crash. The Kazakh aircraft's outdated systems, including a lack of altitude alerting and the inability to automatically capture altitude, compounded the problem. The pilots were simply not equipped with the tools they needed to prevent the disaster. A legacy of change in the aftermath of the collision, the aviation industry took immediate steps to overhaul airspace safety. In 1999, India became the second country in the world to mandate TCAS in its airspace, with other nations quickly following suit. Delhi's airport, along with other major airports in India, received much-needed upgrades to their radar systems, and the airspace was fully handed over to civilian control. Today, air travel in India is safer than ever, with up to 500,000 people taking to the skies every day, an astonishing figure that continues to grow. The cost of ignoranceth horrific loss of 349 lives was a wake-up call for the entire world. While the failure of the Kazakh crew to maintain their altitude was a key factor in the crash, it was the outdated technology, poor communication, and systemic failures in air traffic control that sealed their fate. Tragically, it took the lives of so many for these lessons to be learned, but today's aviation safety standards, thanks to this tragedy, are stronger and more rigorous than ever. If you found this story as chilling and eye-opening as we did, don't forget to check out more episodes from our series. You can watch them here or support our channel on Patreon for exclusive content. Thank you for watching and for taking the time to learn about one of the most devastating accidents in aviation history.